Hello everyone and welcome to another movie review on Max Schroeder Productions. Here from the next movie I'm about to talk to you is Romeo and Juliet, the 1996 adaptation directed by Baz Luhrmann, and that was released on November 1st, 1996, and stars Leonardo DiCaprio, obviously we all know who he is, Claire Danes, Brian Denny, John Leguizamo, Pete Postlethwaite, and Paul Rudd. Now, this film is considered a romantic tragedy film and also a crime film. I guess if you look at that perspective, then yeah. This film domestically has won $46,351,345. Foreign, it made $101,203,653, and worldwide it made a total of $147,554,998. And this film, when it was released, was the number one on its opening weekend. It was the highest grossing live-action film adaptation of any Shakespeare play. So this was the highest film that was depicted on a Shakespeare play. And so the plot in the story is basically, as we all know, the story of Romeo and Juliet. It's two star-crossed lovers who love each other and are trying to be in a romantic relationship together and try to be married, while both of their families have a huge fight and feud between each other, and it just never stops. And the families that are in this, the families that are fighting are known as the Capulets and the Montagues, which, as Romeo and Juliet fall in love, Juliet is a Capulet while Romeo is a Montague, and they always have a feud with each other. And also characters from the stage adaptation that made it in there are the Capulets, which are Tybalt, Capulet, Lady Capulet, and Rosalind. And the Montagues are Mercutio, Benvolio, Montague, and Lady Montague. And also some other notable characters from the stage adaptations are Prince Paris. Prince Aeschylus is also like the prince of the town in the original stage adaptation that's like tries to make peace between the families, but then it's actually in this film adaptation, it's a police chief who tries to bring peace in the city. So this film basically is a modern adaptation of the Romeo and Juliet play, because it's set in obviously 1996. There's a lot of like, not so really drugs, but it's war, crime, and stuff like that. So it's kind of like a modernized depiction. I mean, quite frankly, kind of like even for today. This film was filmed in Mexico for most of the film. What is interesting about this is they talk from the original dialogue, the original English that was in the play. All the characters, the police chief, obviously Romeo and Juliet, and all the characters speak in the old English dialogue. Even though this is set in like modern times, it's still interesting that they still throughout the whole film talk in old English dialogue. And as Romeo and Juliet try to form a relationship with each other, both their cousins, and have a feud between each other, and the parents forbid them to get married, whereas Romeo goes to a friar who's played by Pete Postlethwaite to try to marry them so then they can fall in love together. And also the friar is also thinking too they can make a peace between the two families. If a Capulet and Montague get married, then the feud between families would stop and peace would be in the whole city. Some interesting facts about the film. The actress and actor Danes and DiCaprio, both who play Romeo and Juliet, did not get along on set. From sources are again from IMDb. They did not get along on the set. And I didn't notice this, but as you see in the film, Claire Danes actually wears a wig throughout the whole film, which is interesting. And about the character of Tybalt, Shakespeare describes him as more of like a showy type guy, which kind of probably means like a badass sort of character. So if you see the character Tybalt, you can clearly see like the director Baz Luhrmann tries to emphasize on Tybalt about how showy he could be. And as you notice at the Capulet Ball, which is kind of like a foreshadow of the whole story and the characters, is that all the characters wear costumes at the Capulet Ball, like a costume party, that represent each of their characters as like probably like what describes them as that character. Like, for example, Romeo's dressed as a knight, being he's a prince, or not a prince, but a handsome young guy. Juliet is dressed as an angel. Tybalt is dressed as a devil. And Capulet as an emperor, and then so forth and so on. Some interesting fact too. What I love the most about that film, just every time I watch it, is that the opening scene at the gas station. I love that. I love that opening so much. It's so. I wouldn't think of a Shakespeare play it would start like that, but it's so cool to watch, and it's just an awesome scene with the jump cuts, the freezes, the describing the character titles of who the characters are, the swords that they pull out, and everything is just really interesting. And actually, I looked it up, and it said that scene took about 7 days to shoot before they finally got it. So DiCaprio was really the first choice in mind for the role of Romeo, but then I think even before him there was a character, Neil Patrick Harris, was the first choice up until they decided Leonardo DiCaprio, because who doesn't want to star Leonardo DiCaprio in a Romeo and Juliet film? And he also fought for Claire Danes to be in the role of Juliet, where as many other actresses were trying to star as Juliet, where we get like Natalie Portman, who's Padme, I believe. Yeah, Padme in the Star Wars saga was originally going to be Juliet, but since her and DiCaprio were like 8 years apart, the director kind of didn't want that to happen, so that was kind of awkward to them. So that's why they got Danes, which they, I believe, are 3 years apart, if I'm not mistaken. And in the first time in a Shakespeare play, the actress Juliet, Claire Danes, is actually 3 years older than the original character in the play, which is very interesting. Other things to note when you watch this film, there are various like magazines, billboards, advertisements that contain Shakespeare quotes from many different stories. Like there's quotes from Macbeth, there's quotes from Hamlet, there's quotes from obviously Romeo and Juliet, obviously, no brainer. There's quotes from Julius Caesar and a whole bunch of other of his plays. First time, and what's interesting too is when they called the guns swords, the guns were actually named after different swords that all the characters use. Like there's the guns that were represented in there are called a sword 9mm pistol, a dagger 9mm pistol. Also, I believe there are like shotguns that are called sword in there too, and so forth and so on. So really, it's really interesting how they were able to do that with modern adaptation. Instead of using swords, they used guns. And what was interesting is the director has done many collaborations with these actors later on in the future too. And also a little spoiler alert, if you've seen the film, there is a moment in the Capulet ballroom scene where Romeo takes a little ecstasy pill, a drug, so to say, and then later tries to spit it out and get it out of him, and he said that he kind of says, boy, this is weird, this is odd. So if you notice that kind of foreshadows the ending of this film, where later on when he dies in the film, he takes a drug that kills him instantly. And also, if you notice too, a lot of important events happen near or in water locations. What I mean by that is when the first time that Romeo and Juliet meet, they meet next to a fish bowl, and they meet side by side, which again, there's water. They meet the balcony scene, which got changed to being in a swimming pool, where the famous line, Romeo, Romeo, where art thou, Romeo, is filmed in a pool. Mercutio's death is filmed on a beachside. So, and there's many other references in there as well that portray important events near or in water. Also, some things to note about the original play compared to this film. In the original play, Mercutio and Paris both die, actually. And in this film, you see that Mercutio dies, but Paris still lives, which is kind of probably a little odd, considering I thought they would follow the play. But yeah, Mercutio is the one that died, and Paris still lives for some reason. And then also what I researched online too, if I can pull up my laptop real quick, there is a lot more differences between the original play and the movie that we don't get that we obviously don't know. I mean, I resourced this from IMDb as well, and some of the differences between the movie and the original play is that even though it retains the original Shakespearean dialogue, like the original spoken dialogue, the film kind of represents the Montagues and the Capulets as like wartime or warring mafia empires, because they own like legitimate like business fronts and businesses. Like there's many different skyscrapers that say Capulet, Montague, and some smaller businesses say Montague, Capulet, Montague. So it's like they own like most of the city and try to battle like who can get the most businesses. And again, the swords are replaced with guns with brand names like dagger and sword. Some of the characters' names are changed, like Lord and Lady Montague and Lord and Lady Capulet are given first names. And in the original play, first names were never mentioned at all, whether it was in the play or in the character introduction talking about the characters. Their first names were not said or spoken in the original play. And Friar Lawrence in the original play actually becomes Father Lawrence, and I don't want to get too detailed about that, but there is a difference between a friar and a father when it comes to the Catholic religion, because there are a lot of Catholic imagery within this film, and yeah, friar is more of a brother monk, whereas a father is a priest, a religious I forgot the words, but yeah, a priest, a pastor. And Prince Aeschylus is rewritten again as the police chief of the city that they are in, which is Verona Beach is the name of the city. And he's actually called Captain Prince, which is kind of ironic. The adaptation of some of the characters and families change from the original. Like there's so much in depth about the characters and the changes. And Gregory and Samson, two characters in the film, are portrayed as Capulets, but in the play, but in the film they are Montagues, aka characters from the original play that include Abram as Abra and Petruchio, shifted from the Montagues to the Capulet family. And in addition, most like a few plot details are shifted, especially at the ending, because at the ending, I believe, it's been a while since I read the Shakespeare play, but at the ending we get Juliet takes this drug that apparently makes her fall asleep like she were dead and wakes up at a certain time. And so then, Romeo is supposed to get a letter from the friar saying she's dead and she will wake up at this hour. Well, then he never got that letter, so then his cousin, I forgot the name of the cousin that went there, told him like, hey, Juliet is dead, you got to come over here and get over there. So Romeo races back to the city, goes in to see Juliet, and finds Juliet, and then is saying a whole bunch of this dialogue, and then takes a drink of a drug that he has that would make him die instantly by taking this drug. But it's odd because as soon as he starts sipping it, like it goes past his lips, Juliet wakes up and sees her as he sees her, or she sees him as he sees her right at that moment, and is dying at the moment, says his last breath before he dies. So then Juliet relentlessly cries and is horrified by what has happened. So then she takes his pistol and takes her own life and commits suicide. That ending is not really what it was in the original play. So what happens in the original play is that he does drink poison, but okay, so a lot of the ending really kind of is overly dramatic, so to say, rather than it is tied to the original play, but it's dramatized a lot because it says that Juliet takes her own life, but doesn't really specify how she did it. But in this film, she kills herself with Romeo's gun. And a lot of that, like Romeo does rush to the tomb of Juliet and everything. But it's more dramatized about because I think about there's subtle little things that are kind of different from play. Obviously, Romeo takes a human as a shield when he goes into the tomb as the police are trying to fire at him. I don't think the police found him are really in the play. Maybe that's the difference. But this film has a lot of different differences between the original play. But as the director, quote unquote, says, if he would make this film, if Shakespeare was still alive at the time, he always thought, how would Shakespeare make this as a film in today's world? Which is how the Baz Luhrmann tried to visualize and tell the story of Romeo and Juliet in a modern day setting, opposed to in the 1968 adaptation of Romeo and Juliet, where it's the old English, old setting, the original play, and not a modern day 60s version. So this film I would highly recommend especially if you're big into Shakespeare and English literature. I would highly give this movie a go. Also, too, if you're just big into drama movies or romantic movies or maybe crime movies too, I would highly encourage this film because it's quite honestly a good movie to watch for people just to introduce people to Shakespeare, and also it's a good movie to watch even for entertainment purposes too. It's such a great film. I highly encourage it. I would give it maybe a 7 out of 10 rating because other than there are some slight differences from the plays and Shakespeare, all in all, it's still a good film to watch and it's entertaining. I just kind of... I think for characters, they should have had the original characters instead of mixing them up and give them different names, because that's just so confusing once you read the actual play. But all in all, you get the aspect. The whole thing is basically the play, just a modern version, 1996 modern film. So that is my review on Romeo and Juliet. Please comment and tell me what you think about this movie, whether you've seen it or going to see it. Please like my video, subscribe to my channel, and again, this is Max Schroeder Productions. Thank you for watching my movie review, and I will see you next time.